things are not great in Baltimore Ravens land right now, and John Harbaugh is looking at some potential changes. He finally hinted even at maybe some big offensive line changes. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage over here on Locked On Ravens. And we have a jam-packed show today. Again, the Ravens, they're leaving us plenty to talk about with the state of the team right now. We'll talk about John Harbaugh hinting at some changes, even on the offensive line. We'll dive into Ravens trade speculation beginning again, as well as just some analysis from the team right now. And here to do that with me, you might have heard him as the voice of the Baltimore Ravens for a long time, as well as over at Fox 45, and now doing some stuff for 105.7. It is Bruce Cunningham. And Bruce, I'm glad to have you back on the show. I wish, again, we were talking under better circumstances, because this team right now, 1-4 is a really tough place to be, especially just with like how they look on the field and the vibes around them.
1-4 is awful, but when you saw when the schedule came out that they had a chance of a slow start, you knew that. But what I'm seeing, I'm watching body language, and I'm seeing a bunch of slumped shoulders, and I'm seeing just that doesn't look to be a lot of fighting spirit in these players right now. And I don't mean to be corny by saying that, but I don't see that. And those have always been hallmarks of Ravens teams. Detroit pushed him around. The Houston freaking Texans pushed him around. They got problems. And John, I listened to him today. I hung on every word, and he's very careful with what he says. But he's a troubled man. You could see it in his eyes.
Right. It's there. And whether it be some of the pressure that he's facing, and look, it's a lot of it right now, because we understand and we know that the way this roster was built, this was a team that had high Super Bowl aspirations. And I mean, Bruce, in the span of a month, they've gone from that like perennial Super Bowl contender to, in my opinion, the laughing stock of the league. Like, everybody's looking at Baltimore and being like, man, what's going on over there? And everyone in Baltimore is like, please look away. It's awful right now.
Your quarterback's out. Okay. Your highly paid defensive lineman is out. Oh, by the way, for the year, your middle linebacker, your Pro Bowl guy, he's out. Your great safety, your all pro safety, he's out too. Look, I knew it was going to be a slaughter Sunday, but I would have liked to seen a little bit more try, and really, and I'm not somebody that bashes John Harbaugh a lot, but that's got to be on him, the body language and all of that. I'm not saying he's lost the team. I'm not around the team enough to even know if he's lost the team or not, but they don't seem to be, they don't have this like they used to have. And I don't know what the problem is, but that's something that can be fixed right now.
Yeah, It just feels like even with the play on the field, they're not going to win anything when the vibes are like this and players are dejected. It seems like, Bruce, on the TV feeds, every single cut is to either an injured Ravens player or a guy that looks like he doesn't want to be there on the sideline, whether it's a player or a coach.
Did you notice John said in the press conference today, well, there is good news. We had nobody hurt yesterday.
You take any little sliver you can get at this point. Like, it is what it is. Although you mentioned, hanging on to every word John Harbaugh says. And he was asked a question about, personnel changes, right? Because John Harbaugh said they have a lot of decisions to make. And obviously everybody wanted to know, what are those decisions? And so, particularly along the offensive line, there's other personnel changes too. John Harbaugh said, quote, "Oh yeah, everything is on the table. There are guys who are still in that area where they still have to prove themselves, and those guys are under consideration all the time. They are the starters because they have earned that to a point, but you got to keep earning that, and you have to keep getting better. You can't plateau." And this is the thing that I heard him say, Bruce. I heard him say here, quote, "If we were hoping you could make more progress as a player, and if it isn't happening, at some point in time, somebody else is going to get a chance, and that's just the way it should work." And I agree with that, but I know the messaging from Harbaugh and the Ravens have been like, hey, we like our guys. These are the guys we're going to go in there. The offensive line in particular, Bruce, has been really bad to start this season. You could see on Sunday, no push against the Texans D-line. Guys were getting, couldn't get out of their stances, weren't getting to the second level, getting bowled over. I mean, I think the Ravens need to make a change on that offensive line. Who is it? I need to look at the guard position with Falele and Voorhees, but it's just all around bad.
What do they got left? Ben Cleveland? You got a lot of faith in him. I really don't. That is something they could make a move on now. I don't know who's available in free agency offensive lineman, but you got to bring some experience in here. You really do. And Houston has those great edge rushers. They have the pair of them, and I knew the O-line was going to struggle with that, and they did. But when I heard that Ronnie Stanley wasn't playing, I said, this is awful. This is going to be a horrible day. And it turned out to be just that. They got the best running back in the NFL, and this O-line can't get him any yards. What's going on here? But like I said, Ben Cleveland, who else is back there? The cupboard's not exactly bursting right now.
No, it's not. You could maybe make a play. Corey Bullock could maybe play some guard for you. That's really the only other option, right? Really,
or
besides
go find
Ben
somebody,
Yeah. At this point, you might as well try to shell out the big bucks and try to get a Brandon Sheriff out of retirement or something like that. Try to get him back playing. Or what they could do, and this is a guy they shouldn't have let walk in the first place. I wonder if Tennessee could trade Kevin Zeitler and maybe you could bring him back at the guard spot. I wouldn't mind that one.
I wouldn't mind it either. That's intriguing. And I know they didn't want to give him up. They just had to because that was Lamar's contract year. Nobody was going to get a contract that year. Tennessee, though, they know how bad the Ravens are struggling. And I don't know that they really want to help the Ravens that much. It would cost them. I don't know if I want to give a 3 or a 4 up for him, but that may be what Tennessee would ask. But you're going to have to get some help there, and you're going to have to get it there now. The Ravens were better against the run than they have been since Matabike went down. I was looking at that especially, and that's one thing that Houston didn't do all that well against them. But John Jenkins has kind of filled that gap admirably, so they're looking better there. But John also today was kind of cagey with who's coming back. He's got to have a lot of guys come back, I would think you probably got a chance to see Stanley, and you probably got a chance to see number 14 because they were late scratches. They almost were able to play Sunday. Beyond that, I just can't say. When you look at the nature of these injuries, you got guys with calves, and you got guys with hamstrings. Those are two of the most tricky injuries there are, and they're not even injuries that you can just directly treat. You just got to kind of let them wear out. And if you look at these injuries, I think Marlon's a calf, right? Hamilton, I think, was a calf. And then what is Roquan? I can't remember.
I think it's Marlon's a calf, Hamilton's a groin, and Roquan's a hamstring. So, yeah.
Hamstrings are bad. And when you think that your two best players, your two signature players have hamstring issues, this season's looking real dark,
Yeah, it's tough right now, and
especially after the Orioles. Haven't we been through enough in this town? We're gonna. It's gonna be like The Walking Dead around here in December. You watch and see.
Man, again, I don't know what it is right now with Baltimore sports, and you would think that like with the way the Orioles and Ravens were playing, even just last season, at least for the beginning part of the year for the Orioles, it's like, man, you're gonna have these competitive Baltimore sports teams for years and years and years, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, the Orioles are bad. Well, we can't wait for the Ravens now. Orioles are done. Ravens will save us, and now the Ravens are,
we waited for this. I have a 24-second rule or 24-hour rule on social media usually when the Ravens play, because you just don't want to get caught up in that back and forth and people fire this guy. But yesterday I posted. I just said, look, we expected this. The team went into the game with a huge gash cut across its roster. Don't get upset over this. You knew this was going to happen. Just think of better days. And I was sorry I did that. Oh, wow. Okay, fine.
It got so uncompetitive, and guys seemed to, whether it was give up, not want to be there, or whatever it may be, the energy just got so low. And at a certain point, you're just like, man, who's buying into what? You heard Kyle Van Noy's comments after the game on Harbaugh and Orr's messaging. He's just kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of a question of on my pay grade. I want to defer that away. And that's not great.
I listened to Van Noy yesterday, and I got the feeling that he wanted to say a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And he's too much of a veteran to do that. But he's cooking. He's cooking on the inside, you can tell. And I hope the rest of them are. But that aside, the injury thing just won't go away. But if you're going to have all these guys injured, at least put some warriors out there. And they're not doing that right now, Right. And as far as the run against the Texans, yeah, they did give up a couple of runs, but compare that to against Detroit, when Detroit was just getting yards at will. And you really noticed that Matabike was gone. By the way, I think Detroit could win the Super Bowl. I really do. It's too early in the season, but man, tell me somebody that's playing better than them right now,
They're incredible. And again, like if you had told me the Ravens would have lost, and I think we talked about this on Saturday when I was on with you on the radio. It's like if you had told me the Ravens had lost to the Bills and the Chiefs and the Lions, even Houston, even though they're not on that same tier, I'd be like, all right, man, that's tough. Not a great start to the year at all. But I would hope that they were competitive and fighting in those games, and like they looked like they belonged there. And it's just been the outside of the Buffalo game until late in that fourth quarter. That's the only exception of that rule. It's just like, it's not that they're losing the games. It's how they're losing, how they look while they're losing, and issues that we've seen for a really long time, some longer than others, that continue to pop up, whether it be week after week, month after month, or even year after year.
There are people, I forget who wrote this, but that are suggesting that maybe Buffalo broke the Ravens. Maybe that blowing that 15-point lead, they haven't been the same since then. The Cleveland win was nice and everything, but if you remember, that game was competitive until the third quarter, and then they started picking up fumbles and running them in for touchdowns and things. Maybe that Buffalo game did break them. I don't know, but this ain't the Ravens team we were expecting to see, and I don't see it getting a whole lot better. Eras in the NFL are very short. And I'm starting to wonder if the page is not starting to turn here.
Yeah.
They've had that core together for a while, minus, Derrick, but they, that core of great players that they have that won all those games, they're pushing 30, every one of them. And like I said, eras are short. And then you look at what the Colts are doing and Detroit and I wonder. I just wonder. I don't want to be alarmist or anything or sound like you kids get off my lawn, but I'm starting to get that feeling.
No, it's a valid point, and I think that's a big conversation. I actually want to dive into that in the second part of the show, because if they go into this bye week 1-5, you really have to start thinking about what the future for this team holds, even though still a pretty young season right now. So we're going to dive into all that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. My favorite part, PrizePicks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Bruce Cunningham still talking with you, talking Ravens football here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Bruce, you mentioned that maybe being the turning of a new page, the end of an era here in Baltimore. And you talked about it, how you can tell John Harbaugh certainly is feeling that pressure. The team is certainly feeling that pressure. And I think the big thing for me is like the Ravens in Lamar Jackson's career have had 3 incredible chances to win a Super Bowl, 2019, 2023, and 2024. Not only do you not have a win, you don't even have an appearance in the Super Bowl to show for that. And so that's why this year is so disappointing, because you've had those opportunities. The Ravens also historically healthy in the past 2 seasons, but we've seen injury years like this happen. You can do 2022, 2021, 2014, when they were throwing you and I out there at cornerback against the Patriots in the divisional round. Like, they have had, every team deals with it, but I tend to use injuries as context. Yes, it lowers your ceiling and it lowers your floor, but we just saw a San Francisco team go out there with you and I at receiver. They had no one at receiver. Brock Purdy was out. Nick Bosa's done, and they beat the Rams, who are coming to Baltimore this week.
Which made it hurt even worse for Ravens fans, And as far as you and me playing, I'll tell you a story. Some years ago when Ozzie was still GM, we were waiting to go live. We were out in front of the complex, and it was dark and it was cold, and we're standing there, and Eric DeCosta walks by. And at the time, they'd had 4 or 5 tight ends go down. They were really looking for tight ends. And Eric says, "Hey, how you?" I said, "Hey, Eric, I just want to tell you, I played tight end in high school." And he stopped, and he looked me up and down, and he said, "You could probably catch it, but I doubt you could run with it." And he walked. I didn't mean to swerve away from your question, but I'm really starting to feel that way. Lamar, this is year 2 of that 5-year deal that he signed. He's probably got the most time left on the team right now. How much longer do you think Humphrey's going to be around? They just signed Hamilton long term. You're saying you might have heard Trey talk about Mark Andrews. I mean, this is starting to feel like a team that's about to break up.
Yeah, and that's something I think it was a conversation point all off season with obviously the Andrews likely situation, the whole tight end room, honestly, being all free agents after this season. Always a free agent. Travis Jones is a free agent. They have to make a decision on if they want to pay Zay Flowers in the next couple of seasons. They extended Hamilton, like you mentioned, but there are just a lot of moving pieces right now.
I would think Zay is the top of their priority list now.
I would hope so.
Hamilton done. I mean, who else would there be? I'm just trying to think here on the fly. I can't imagine anybody.
Linderbaum maybe, but I mean,
yeah, maybe Linderbaum, but eras are short, as I said, and careers are short, and they did have some shots at this. A couple of weeks ago, I did a thing. They honored the 75 Colts at the Babe Ruth Museum. Did it, and they had me co-MC. And it occurred to me while I was there that those 75 Colts were a very good team in the decade when the Steelers and the Raiders were great teams, and Dallas was a great team. And so they never quite get their due. And I'm afraid the Ravens are going to kind of slide back into that slot, the Ravens of this era, because they had their chance and they just didn't get it done. They have 2 Super Bowls. And I think most of us would say the team that we've seen the last 3 or 4 years are as good, if not better, than those 2 Super Bowl winning teams. I would say that roster-wise. But just because they're not going to have Super Bowls to show for it doesn't mean it hadn't been a great ride. Now, having said that, let me issue a warning. There's no guarantee this is going to continue. This success year in and year out. We have been so lucky here in Baltimore. If the page is about to turn, and I know I'm sounding very pessimistic, but I'm feeling pessimistic. If the page is about to turn, it's been a pretty good era. But for the third time, eras are short in the NFL, aren't they?
Yeah, they can be. And again, the Ravens have outlived most when it comes to eras. And again, like it's not over, right? Like you're saying, this is all hypothetical, but you kind of, again, it's not going to last forever. Brady and Belichick, they didn't last forever. There's a lot that you have to look at, but it's just the way that they're playing. And I keep going back to it, the way that they look, the way that they're losing these games. Yeah. You wonder about the buy-in for some of these guys. And look, they're saying the right things, right? Derrick Henry talked about how, it's easy to look the other way, but everything's still good. Nate Wiggins talking about how they're close on defense when they looked anything but on Sunday against the Texans. Like they're saying the right things.
They weren't close to anything on Sunday, especially receivers. I think I heard, did they have like 16 missed tackles in that game or something like that?
I wouldn't be shocked if you're right, because
tackling is a fundamental. And this is the National Football League. These are the best players in the world. And you're missing tackles? Come on. That's not Ravens football. This whole thing is just starting to mystify me,
Yeah. Some stats I'll throw out for you is coming into this game, Bruce, the Texans were the second worst third down offense and the second worst red zone offense in the league. The Ravens proceeded to allow them to go 7 of 12 on third down and 4 for 5 in the red zone, both which would have been near the top, if not the top marks in the league. So it's what everybody's saying right now, right? It's, hey, if you're an offense and you're struggling and you need a get right game, come on down to Baltimore. Yeah. You play this defense. You're going to be the best offense in the league.
We're the best thing that can happen for you. Because I tell you what, the Texans walked out of here with a lot more confidence than they walked in. I watched some of their post game, and it was really funny. They had their chests out and they were smiling and high fiving. This was a big win for the Houston Texans franchise, who has seen nothing but futility against Baltimore in the past, including that getting their pants pulled down last Christmas Day. You better believe that was being talked about in that locker room. And so that had to feel so good for them,
Yeah, and you could tell how much it meant to them, especially right with the history between those two teams. But it does kind of make you wonder with how they're playing, what the future of a lot of these guys could look like. And, you mentioned that I had seen something about Mark Andrews. And so apparently here, Eric Williams, a reporter over at Fox Sports, he talked in an article about the fact that he had heard that maybe Mark Andrews could be available or command some interest, at least, around the league. And people obviously know Andrews in the last year of his contract. Baltimore right now, they're 1-4 at the moment. And Isaiah likely seems to be the heir apparent to Mark. That always has seemed like the transition that's going to happen. Now, if the Ravens, I'm not saying they're in, sell mode right now, but if we still see them slip and it gets too far out of control, we could see the Ravens be sellers for the first time in a really long time.
And the thing about Andrews, trading him saves them from making a real hard decision. They're not going to re-sign him. He's a great player. He's been one of the great players in Ravens history, but he's really close to 30. And, likely has shown the ability. You've got to let the older guy go. That's just the way it works in the NFL. And it's sad. I mean, Andrews has been a fine player. But, again, I don't know how big this rebuild is going to be, but there's going to be a rebuild. There's going to be a reckoning for all of this. I'm worried about John Harbaugh's future. I think that unless he gets it turned around really quickly, that this could be it for him. They're not going to do it during the season. Bisciotti found him himself. He didn't go through channels, he didn't have Ozzie. I mean, he locked in on John Harbaugh himself. And so he's been Bisciotti's guy. So this would be a major move for Bisciotti to make. So I do think he'd wait until the off season, and it's a hell of a job. Any coach in the world would want to have this job, with the facilities you have and the way the franchise is run. But it might be time for just a clean slate. It really might be. And I'm the last guy that wants to fire coaches. You never hear me talking about firing coaches, but it's starting to kind of feel like time, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels that way. And whenever you have Lamar Jackson, you have a chance. Like whenever Lamar's a quarterback, you have a chance. You have building blocks.
Long term, you got some pieces that are going to be around for at least a few more years. But the whole thing's just feeling kind of stale right now. Just kind of stale.
Yeah, it feels that way in the messaging of how everything is kind of working. And again, it's not necessarily about is Mark available? Could they move Mark? It's kind of just like we knew coming into this year, and I know you and I even talked about it. It's like this roster is like a once in a lifetime type of roster on paper. Not that it was perfect. The guard position they could have invested more in. Pass rush. Could they have gone out there and gotten a big fish? Yeah, probably. But they chose to keep their picks, which is what they do. But on paper, you look at the secondary, you look at some of the other positions, you're like, man, this roster top to bottom for the most part is really, really, really good. But that also means that as guys start to outgrow their rookie contracts and get better, you can't pay everybody. I mean, we do this seemingly like every 2 to 4 years with the Ravens, where they just have this laundry list of free agents that you just can't pay everybody. And then they do a good job at identifying for the draft. But at this point, it's just kind of like a big short-term move at the expense of some long-term winning, whether it be 5 or 4 years down the road.
Yeah.
That's what fans are looking for.
Yeah, that's not their style. They're not going to make a panic move. But I do see them making some kind of move this week. There's going to be at least one new body come in here this week, because everybody knows that what we saw Sunday is unacceptable. And when I say everybody, that includes everybody in the castle out in Owings Mills. A lot of this seems to be pointing at Zach Orr, too, who struggled at the beginning of last year and got him righted. And now they continue to struggle. He's got an excuse this year, and all those great players are injured. But still, you got Pagano sitting right there. And that's a move. It may not be a good move, but it would at least get people's attention, I suppose. I just don't know what they can do. I'll be watching him real close. He doesn't have to talk again until Wednesday. So I would imagine tomorrow could be, I won't say action-packed, but you could see some action tomorrow.
Yeah, Orr is interesting, and I want to dive into that in the third segment with you, because I think that there's a bigger conversation to be had about Zach Orr and just the way, honestly, play calling for both Orr and Todd Monken, because there are some things that I just wonder about why they're doing some things that they're doing. So stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athlete sweat, all the details, Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Bruce Cunningham, still talking Ravens football with you. Appreciate everybody for being here with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Bruce, continuing our conversation about Zach Orr, I don't know if you feel this way, but some of this soft zone that they run with so much cushion on these receivers. Now we know what they're predicated on, right? Usually it's bend, don't break. They don't let you beat them deep. You're not going to see those 50, 60-yard touchdowns over the top of the defense. But what that means is the defense takes the short intermediate stuff, but then they've rested their laurels on the fact that when they get to the opposing offense gets to like Ravens 30, Ravens 25, that's when they tighten up and essentially force the opposing offense into a kick. But the Ravens, they're not stopping anybody right now. The Ravens in week 4 and week 5, 20 total defensive possessions. They forced a punt on just 2 of those possessions, 1 punt in each game.
Imagine how much fun it was in the Houston offensive coaching box yesterday, with all their headsets on. Imagine how much fun those dudes had, because no matter what they were dialing up, it was going down the field. This is like a dream day for those guys. But they're just – you could be the greatest marksman in the world, but if you don't have bullets to put in that rifle, you ain't going to hit the target, and that's where the Ravens are right now. Let me repeat. Go right up the middle. I mean, Matabike, number 0, I'm so upset. Anquan's, you know what I'm saying? And then Humphrey behind that, and then Hamilton on the back end. What do you have left? Somebody said yesterday it was like the varsity versus the JVs, and that was a JV Ravens team we saw yesterday. It really was.
Yeah, and the result was like a varsity versus JV game. The other thing too is the injuries add that context. And I think to me, the bigger problem is that even when those guys were out there, the defense still wasn't good. I mean, they gave up 40 to Buffalo in week 1. That Cleveland offense, it's Joe Flacco in that Cleveland offense. But then it's like, okay, you give up 38 to Detroit. And now Matabike's out for that game. But Roquan was still there. Marlon was still there. Kyle was still there. They just didn't look good even with those guys still out there. And so for Zach Orr, this is the second straight year where he's kind of started a lot slower than people have thought. They made those sweeping changes, like he said last year, and he, got the ship righted and everything. But I think Zach Orr has a lot of talent and potential as a defensive coordinator. I think the potential is there. I just think the problem, Bruce, is the Ravens don't have time to wait for him to realize that potential at this point.
They don't, and that's exactly why they brought Chuck Pagano in. That is exactly why he's here. They had all those veterans at corner. That's what his coach, the title, he's secondary coach. Well, there's not a whole lot of coaching you got to do with that crew. They all, they're veteran guys except for Starks at safety. But he's there. He's in the building, and everybody knows it. And it may be time to make that change. The problem is, and Brian Billick used to say this all the time, when you take a guy like Zach Orr, he used to quote the movie Brian did, Unforgiven, where Clint Eastwood makes the speech, when you kill a man, you take away everything he's ever have or ever going to have. And he said he always took that into consideration when he had to fire coaches. And that's going to be the case with Zach Orr also, So I'm sure that's going to enter into the decision process, but I don't think it's going to be John's decision alone. I think DeCosta is going to be heavily involved in that discussion.
Yeah, and it even brings the conversation up about Todd Monken, who I don't think is nearly on the hot seat the way that Zach is. He's not on the hot seat at all. The offense has not been the problem, in my opinion. It's just interesting.
I mean, he's having to absorb the loss of, a generational player and try to make an offense out of that. And that first drive looked pretty good yesterday, but it looked like it was clicking. And I don't want to say quit. I don't think an NFL player can quit by definition, but I just saw the effort go down after that opening, go down and kick the field goal. I just didn't see the same level of effort. And as I said at the beginning of this show, that shocks me because effort is something we've always seen from the Ravens. You've never had to question that part of this. And that's baffling to me too.
Yeah.
Man, are we depressing the folks enough tonight?
Super Bowl back on. They're winning it.
Hey, the Yankees are about to be eliminated. Let's latch onto that.
I know. Hey, Bills lost. No undefeated teams left in the NFL, right? There are some things that we can, some little things. And, John Harbaugh did say that while they probably won't be 100%, not getting everybody back, they probably will get some guys back, and man, do they need it for this Rams game.
You know what? They'll be lucky if the Rams don't score 100. You know, seriously. Compare the Rams offense to the Houston offense.
Yeah.
You know, seriously. CJ threw 4 touchdowns yesterday. The Rams have got to be laughing. They just got to be laughing when they think what it's going to look like in here on Sunday. Seriously. If the fan base is upset now, if everybody's depressed, just wait until 4 o'clock Sunday. You're going to be good and damn depressed then. But then's the bye week, and hopefully coming out of the bye, 2 things will happen. The schedule gets a lot softer, okay? And you get guys an extra week to try to heal up. But given the fact that their hamstrings and calves, they're just so unpredictable, this thing's just a giant mess. I'm glad I'm not covering it every day anymore. This would be depressing, to have to go there.
We're trying to get through it. We're trying to look at every single possibility. And look, I'll
tell you what, I will say this based on the games yesterday. Keep your eye on the New England Patriots.
Ravens will see them later this year.
Well, why not?
Yeah, got to factor that in too.
Sure, come on.
Yeah, when you're talking about the effort, though, there was a question that John Harbaugh was asked about Rashod Bateman. This kind of goes into what you were saying about the effort and, not quitting, but essentially, did guys want to be there? Rashod Bateman on Cooper's interception essentially stopped running his route. And this is not the first time Bateman has done that. And again, whether it's he lost the ball or some other things. I mean, we saw, what was it, Cleveland, the ball bounced off his face mask and that was a bad drop. So again, it's just like those types of things where like Bateman just stops running the route and easy interception for Lassiter.
It's not what a pro does. That is not what a professional receiver does. A professional receiver knows his job and knows he needs to finish the job. And he knows he screwed that up. He does. But since he's a professional receiver and they gave him a big contract, they paid him, you should be able to assume these things about a player like that. I was really let down by that, but it just speaks to the entire lack of effort or want to. Bear Bryant used to call it, kids got a lot of want to. Ravens don't have a lot of want to right now,
Yeah, Harbaugh gave a disappointing nod of agreement when, he was, the report, I think it might have been Jerry Coleman, was asked about, or he asked Jerry, what do you think happened? And Jerry said, hey, I thought he gave up on it. Disappointing nod of agreement with that and saying, yeah, I don't know why. I haven't talked to him about it, but you got to keep running through that ball. So look, I don't know what changes are going to happen, what will happen. You talked about maybe today on Tuesday, Bruce, we'll see something, who knows, but now we know the Ravens, they might be maybe a change on the offensive line, maybe a change personnel-wise. Based off Harbaugh's comments yesterday, doesn't look like there'll be a change at coordinator, but maybe if they lose again, the bye week does give them an opportunity. And hey, we know when the Ravens won that Super Bowl back in 2012, they fired Cam Cameron, they brought in Jim Caldwell, they made some changes on the O-line, and that's how they got there.
Yeah. Stranger things have happened, and we're sitting here, I'm looking at October 6th, all right? Season doesn't end until January. A whole lot of things can happen between now and then, but we're not seeing any reasons for hope right now. Childs Walker wrote a great piece in the Banner today. If you haven't read it, you really need to, but that's basically what the piece is about. They're not showing any signs of hope. There's nothing for the fans to kind of latch onto here, and he's right. It's just a bad time. I wish we could fast forward weeks. Just let's flush this week and maybe, and talk to me in 2 weeks and we'll see where things are now. I think things are going to get better, but only because I don't think they can get worse. Yeah. That was the worst performance by a Baltimore Ravens team that I have seen, and I've seen every single damn game, most of them in person. It was just the worst performance. I haven't seen that kind of, for the 10th time, lack of effort out of them. And I'm just bitterly disappointed. Now, I knew they were gashed and they had all these guys out, but at least put the guys in there that want to play, and I just didn't see a whole lot of that.
Well, my message was it was 44-10. It didn't even feel that close. Is how the game was. It was unbelievable. Like
the Texans said, look, kid, we're sorry. Here's a touchdown. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw on the broadcast that they put the Texans, the broadcast, they glitched and put 2nd and 89 for the Texans. And the Ravens actually, when they scored their touchdown, the point total went from, it should have been 9.
Yeah, I saw that.
It went to 21. They're trying to give you 3 points and it's not working. So, man, you're right.
Yeah, you're going bad when the scoreboard guy's feeling sorry for you,
I know the NFL tried to help out. Ravens didn't want it, but that's my thing, right? You're trotting out the defense. Even if Lamar was playing and they put up 35 points, you're still losing by 9. So, they got to figure that aspect out. But you know what? You're right, Bruce. Season's not over yet. Heading into the game on Sunday, the Ravens had the 9th easiest strength of schedule remaining. So, How about that to end the show with some positivity? I mean, that's what we need, right? So
let's cling to that. Let's rally.
There it is.
Down your torches. It's going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be okay, but it could be slightly better. I'll say that.
I know. I agree with you. I don't know how it can get worse, but I said that after the Kansas City game, and look where we are now. So I guess anything is possible. But Bruce, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hopping on. Please, before I get you out of here, tell people where they can find you, what you're working on. I know 105.7 right now, right?
No, well, it's grim over there too, as you might imagine. In fact, they're not taking a lot of calls this week, and I think I know why. But every Saturday noon to 2, I'm getting bumped by Maryland football a couple of times, but I'm on again this week. You know, the Big Ten, they only release their schedule 3 weeks at a time for your starting times and all that. And here's the poor program director at the radio station scratching his head trying to figure out how we're going to do it. But we do know that we're good for this week. And then I think another chunk of their schedule comes out next. Anyway, Saturday noon to 2. And if I'm not there, Johnny Holiday. So see, you can't lose, right?
There you go. There you go. I love it. All right, Bruce, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on. And we'll talk to you next time on Locked On.
All right, man.